Shana Tova, Gamar Chatima Tova. Like many of you, I come into these high holy days with a heart that feels both heavy and hopeful. The challenge of being a rabbi during this season is not only to offer words that hopefully inspire and challenge, but also to speak into a moment when we, as a people, feel more divided than ever. Often, when we hear something we may not agree with, our instinct is to check out. Our bodies remain present, but our hearts and minds retreat. That is why, as I speak about Israel today, I want to acknowledge the difficulty in the room. Many of us hold strong opinions and form judgments based on others' views. Perhaps we have common ground, and perhaps we don't. My invitation is simple: to listen, bless you, with openness. Before speaking to the present moment, I want to share a bit of my own story and connection to Israel. I deeply love and care about Israel and its people. I lived there, met my husband there, and have brought hundreds of people, Jews and non-Jews, to experience its beauty and its complexities. I am still deeply devastated by the atrocities of October 7th and pray daily for the return of the 48 hostages who are still held in Gaza. Israelis have a long path toward healing, and if we're being honest, we all do. Here's what I do know. Hamas is a terrorist organization that must be dismantled. The Israeli people deserve to live in peace, and so do the Palestinians. And I want to be clear, the central challenge before us is not merely political, but spiritual. The spiritual question before us today is, when we feel threatened, do we close ourselves off and isolate? Or do we keep turning outward, toward one another and toward the world? How do we stay true to our Jewish values at a time like this? This week, as I prepared this sermon, I found myself waiting for a peace plan, waiting for news of the hostages, waiting for clarity in a time of fear and uncertainty. Perhaps you too have felt that same mix of hope and dread as we hold our breath for what lies ahead. 727 days. It has been 727 days since Israelis were brutally attacked, murdered, and forced into captivity in Gaza on October 7th, 2023. 727 days of war and trauma. 48 hostages remain captive, and likely only 20 are still alive. Time is running out. We need a permanent solution to free the hostages and end this war for the sake of all involved. This week brought an attempt to change that reality. Like many of you, I watched the press conference with President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu as they laid out a peace plan between Israel and Hamas. It feels like a step in the right direction, but one key player is missing. We don't know where Hamas stands. I applaud our leaders for taking this step, and I hope and pray this plan will bring the hostages home, bring an end to the war in Gaza, and begin the process of healing for both Israelis and Palestinians. Once again, we are asked, will we close our hearts or will we open them wider? Since October 7th, Israel has faced intense criticism from the international community. Anti-Semitic and anti-Israel sentiments have surged on campuses and cities around the globe. Jews have been attacked simply for being Jewish, based on their perceived connection to Israel. Nearly 2 years later, this war, Jews and Israelis alike ask, what is next? 2 weeks ago, the global community condemned Israel for its continued attacks on Gaza and warned of sanctions. Prime Minister Netanyahu responded by telling Israelis to prepare for a super Sparta identity, a future of isolation and self-reliance. Days later, standing beside President Trump, he presented a peace plan, a dramatic pivot from isolation to diplomacy. The shift was striking. Israel was caught between retreating inward or re-engaging with the world. This tension raises a deeper question. Who does Israel want to be after October 7th? Once again, we are asked, will we close our hearts or will we open them wider? On the For Heaven's Sake podcast, Rabbi Daniel Hartman and Yossi Klein Halevi reflected on this very question. Once, Israel was celebrated as startup nation, admired worldwide for its innovation. Today, many see it as warrior nation, defined by survival and conflict. Netanyahu's super Sparta language suggested a nation fully resigned to isolation. But Hartman reminded listeners, after the Holocaust, Israel's founders could have chosen the Sparta identity, strength without vision. Instead, they chose something greater, a nation strong enough to survive, yet also with a cultural and moral center, a light unto the nations. Halevi added that Zionism was never about sovereignty alone, but about sovereignty embraced by the world. That dream now feels at risk. Israel's moral and innovative aspirations are overshadowed by war, leaving it alienated and increasingly isolated. A recent poll shows that half of Americans believe Israel has gone too far in Gaza. Over the summer, a large number of American Jews and Jewish institutions reacted to the growing humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Mainstream Jewish legacy institutions like the Union for Reform Judaism, the Rabbinical Assembly of the Conservative Movement, and the Orthodox Union spoke out, calling for immediate humanitarian aid for the people of Gaza. Again and again, we are asked, will we close our hearts or will we open them wider? When we feel threatened, it's tempting to turn inward. But doing so blinds us from the suffering of others, the devastation in Gaza, the trauma of October 7th, starving children, soldiers dying on the front lines. The answer to anti-Semitism, boycotts in Israel, and anti-Semitism is not to retreat. No. It's to create dialogue and to continue to show up in the world, to engage with moral clarity and empathy. As Rachel Goldberg Polin, mother of Hirsch Goldberg Polin, who was tragically murdered by Hamas in captivity, so eloquently stated, "We in Israel are at a crossroads," she shared. "We are bruised and battle-weary, not just from the outside in, but from our inside rifts. That is beyond dangerous, and it cannot be an option." Have we lost our moral courage? Have we become so preoccupied with self-protection that we fail to see the humanity of the other? This is where Yom Kippur speaks with urgency. Today we recite the Vidui, the communal confession. We confess not only our sins, but those of the community, because silence itself can be a sin. Confession is not only about guilt, it's about moral courage, about refusing silence when rebuke is needed. As Rabbi Irving Greenberg teaches, against the brokenness of guilt and the isolation of sin, Yom Kippur offers the wholeness of living, the oneness of community. And once more, we are asked, will we close our hearts or will we open them wider? The question before us is this: will Israel and the Jewish people retreat into warrior nation, or rise again, as our Bible invites, to serve as a light unto the nations? Yom Kippur calls us to turn outward to God, to one another, and to humanity. We cannot survive alone. We cannot heal alone. We cannot be Israel alone. But together we can be a light unto the nations. Shana Tova.